You're listening to the Make Life Epic podcast with Jim Simcoe. Thanks for being here today. Let's get rolling with the show. Hey, welcome to the Make Life Epic podcast. This is Jim Simcoe. Hope you're having an epic day and things are good. Today, our topic is 15 ways to create a life plan and bring a little clarity to the crazy. And the crazy, I always refer to the crazy as being life, how crazy life is. And this morning is a perfect example. I've been trying to record this podcast for the last half hour. My wife and daughters spent about 15 minutes outside our front door trying to help a moth that had fallen. So it kind of threw me off because I needed to record this in the house, in my home office, because my regular office is a little bit louder. So just, life is just crazy. So this I wrote this in sort of a stream of consciousness and put this outline together. That's kind of how I write too. So like late at night, everyone will be asleep and I'll just have an idea and I'll just start writing and doing an outline on it. And I'll think like, okay, would that make a good idea for a podcast? And then if I think it's going to be okay and I think you'll get some value out of it, I'll record it the next day. And if not, I'll throw it away. So sometimes they work out great, sometimes they don't. So anyway, so this is 15 ways to create a life plan. And I think that, this is one of those that I wrote late at night one time, really, really dug the idea because we're all so busy. And so I think the concept of actually having a plan for our lives is one that we all think like, well, yeah, that sounds fantastic. But, in reality, how can I really make it happen? So this is all about finding your path and finding your way. Because I really do believe, and from what I've seen from other people, is that when you have direction and you have purpose, you have happiness. So happiness is a direct result of direction and purpose. And the more confused you are about your life, the more discontent you feel and the more disconnected that you feel. So you have to realize that your purpose is your path. It's really your way in the world. It's totally unique to you. And, sort of the subtext here is like, really don't listen to anyone else who doubts you because, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Anyway, so there are 15 ways that I feel to create a life plan. You can probably hear my dog Marley walking around in the background. The first way is to determine your why and figure out exactly what your why is and why are you doing what you're doing. And your why is really what gets you out of bed in the morning, what makes you excited to go to work, what makes you stoked to start your day, and really what's your purpose? Why are you here? What are you doing? Why is it important? So knowing your why is really, really crucial. And I run into so many people and they just don't have any idea what they're doing and why they're really doing it. And it's kind of sad in some ways because, you got to know why you're doing it. Like why are you going to work? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you living the way you are? So spend some time figuring out your why. There's a great book called Start With Why. I've mentioned it before. Simon Sinek wrote it. He actually gave a speech right before I gave a speech once. I talked about this before. He probably gave one of the better speeches I've ever heard in my life. And I had to follow him. And I was pretty freaked out because I was so blown away by his speech that I was like, Jesus, how am I going to follow this dude? But anyway, so Start With Why is a great book. Determining your why is really the first step in creating a life plan. And so if that's the first step in creating your why, the second step is really to start looking at a future self-design. So start thinking about your life in the future and what you want it to look like. So what kind of people do you work with? What's your daily life like? What's your who do you help? Who's on your team? What's your family look like? How many kids do you have? All that. If you have kids, if you already have kids, like what are they doing in their lives? Where do you live? What kind of house do you live in? All of that. And so when you start thinking about your future self-design, that really can help you solidify what you want in the future. So like when I look back at mine, when I was in the corporate world, one of the things that I really wanted to get away from when I was in the corporate world, I didn't want to work in, with a huge team. I wanted a smaller team and I wanted to work with really committed people and in a smaller sort of more fun office or funner office. And I've really been able to create that. And I think it's largely because, I thought about it way back when I was designing kind of what my future life is. And I think that, excuse me, I'm drinking some water, determining your future life and designing your future life is really important. You should do it every year and start, thinking about where you are. And this isn't a goals exercise, right? This is more of a like, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? All of that. So that's step 2 in creating a life plan. Step 3 is one that you haven't heard of, but I had a great experience doing this, so I'm going to recommend it to you as well. And that is to do a walkabout. So what's a walkabout? A walkabout is an 8 to 10 mile walk. Okay, so it's not a hike. It doesn't have to be in nature. You can do it on the road. I want you to bring a pen and some index cards. This will take you 3 or 4 hours to do this. And when you're taking off, you start out with a question like, why am I here on earth? What do I want to do? Okay, listen to music and take your time. I did this recently. I was pretty confused about what I wanted to do with my career. So a couple of years ago, I did this and I was just completely confused, super unhappy, just like kind of spinning in 50 different directions. And so left my house, drove down to the beach. As you guys know, we live within a mile and a half of the beach. Parked at the beach, and I just started walking north. And I walked on a stretch of road that I've probably, my office is on that road, and I've probably been on that stretch of road a couple thousand times in the last 20 years. And I got to say, I've run on that road, I've biked on that road, I've driven on that road. I've never walked it. And walking that stretch, and I walked about just under 10 miles, and it took me just about 4 hours because I kind of just took my time. It really brought some insight into my life in terms of what I wanted to do, the kind of coaching I wanted to have, and the kind of business I wanted to have in real estate. And I don't know what the scientific reason is of why it worked and why it was so effective. But I just know that I would walk, I'd have some ideas. I had a pen, some index cards with me, and I wrote down my ideas while I was there. And I listened to a lot of music. And, I'd love to tell you that I listened to, some really calming, awesome, perfectly philosophical, inducing music, but I didn't. I actually listened to a lot of Tupac. I listened to a lot of Snoop. I listened to a lot of Chili Peppers, and I listened to a lot of NWA. So for whatever reason, gangster rap seems to get me going in my head. But the cool thing about that is that at the end of that walk, I was really, really clear about what I wanted my life to look like, and then also what I wanted to do. And it really helped me clear up some of the things that I had some questions on and really get to the heart of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do in my life. And again, it took me 4 hours. It was a long ass walk, but it's great. So I'd really recommend you do it. Again, it doesn't have to be in nature. If you're a person who loves to hike and loves to be in nature, then yeah, maybe that'll help you. But I would also challenge you that, I think you can do it just on a regular road, anywhere in your town, especially if on a street that you go, you travel on a lot. It was cool too. I ended up running into a couple of friends, talked to them for a little bit, told them what I was doing. They gave me some insight. And I saw a lot of things that I hadn't seen, even in driving. It really opens your eyes. And I think that's part of it too. Like I saw a lot of things that I hadn't seen in 20 years from driving on that road or even running on that road. So it was really, really cool. So do a walkabout. That's number 3. Number 4, how to create a life plan, is to rule out all the things you don't want. Okay. So really, to find what you love and really what you want, you have to rule out what you hate, because it gets you to your truth, much, much faster. So for me, I talked about this before, but I really didn't want to work in corporate America anymore. I'd worked in it for a while, been successful, and I just didn't want to be part of that. But then also in terms of running a social venture and a socially good business, that can go, that can spin you out in 50 different ways. And one of the things I also realized was, like, while I wanted to run a social venture, I didn't want to work in a third world. So I didn't want to go build huts in Africa or build, go to the rainforest and do forest conservation. I'm just not that guy. Right. So like, I really admire people who can do that. And if you've been able to do that, if you work for Peace Corps or whatever, if you've done things like that, hey man, more more power to you, but that's just not me. I just can't do that. I like sleeping in a nice room. I like being comfortable. As much as I like challenge myself, I like coming home to I like living in the first world. I'm a big fan of the first world. I have no interest in living and or working in the third world. So that's a big part of this rule, is to rule out what you don't want, because that'll help you get to what you really do want. So that's number 4. Number 5 is an interesting one, I find, because and I read about this recently, but in creating a life plan, it's really crucial to understand what your talents are. So what are your talents? So I want to talk about the difference between talents and skill. Because skill is something you learn, like speaking Spanish, cooking paleo, doing a hang power clean if you're a CrossFit guy or woman. A talent is something that's a natural ability that you have, that you could do drunk and stoned, right? So for me, I would say one of my biggest talents is I can give a speech pretty easily. I'm pretty decent at inspiring others to action. And I, not that I drink and not that I smoke marijuana, because I don't do either one of those really, but I could be completely drunk and go up and someone could say, I want you to give, a half-hour presentation on ants. And I could probably pull it off just because it's just one of my talents. Now, that being said, I'm not being, that's neither here nor there. It's just something I'm good at. There are tons of stuff that I'm not good at. Accounting, I'm not good at. So I would never try and be an accountant. But I think the key here is to understand what your talents are. And because this really will help you, because if you can align your talents with a need in the world, with something that you like doing, then the confluence of those things can really make it really successful for you. So if I look at my example of I love helping people, love giving speech, I love inspiring others to action. I'm actually half decent at those things. So running a coaching business like I'm doing now makes a lot of sense, because it's just it's a confluence of my talents and the needs in the world and something that I'm good at. So figuring out your talents is really, really crucial to creating a life plan. So that's number 5. Number 6. God, I'm drinking a ton of water today. CrossFit was very challenging the other day, so I'm just trying to rehydrate myself. So number 6. This one's interesting too. I thought about this a lot, and I wasn't sure if I was going to include it or not. But number 6 is to figure out what you're chasing. Are you chasing money or are you chasing meaning? Because a lot of times you can't chase both at the same time, because one thing has to be first, and the other one is a resulting byproduct. So, and there's no judgment around this, but what's more important to you right now? Is it the money or is it meaning? And what have you been doing? Are you chasing money or are you chasing meaning? and really, the idea here is to pick a direction and just go. So if you're chasing money, that's totally fine. Chase it and try and find meaning somewhere else. And if you're chasing meaning, know that that's what you're doing. Pick that direction and just go. So it's crucial for you to understand that sometimes chasing money and meaning at the same time doesn't work. So you got to pick a direction, and it's okay, and be okay with either one. So if you're chasing money, totally fine. If you're chasing meaning, totally fine. That's a quick one. Number 7 is to find some happy people. And this is number 7 on how to create a life plan. Find some happy people examples. So what I mean by that is look around in your world and determine who are the happiest people that you know, right? So, and figure out why are they so happy? So observe them. Interview them. You don't have to actually go and say it's a formal interview, but spend time with them and see what they do, see what they believe, see what they, how they think, because that's really going to help you bring some clarity into your own world if you're able to do that. And so, as an example, there's a guy I see almost every day when I go to get coffee, and he's older than me. He's probably mid-60s. He's got a couple of grown-up kids, and he runs a steel company. His name is Mike. I always think of him as Coffee Shop Mike. He always has a huge smile on his face, and he just always looks super happy. The other day we were talking for a little bit, and he was telling me about this great book he was reading, and some surfing he had done, and blah blah blah. And I was just kind of blown away by like this guy is he's got life wired, right? Like he's got a great wife. He runs his own business. He surfs when he wants. He's got some kids that he's close to. He's got some grandkids. He lives by the beach. I mean, he just has things wired. And one of the things I noticed about him, because he's one of my biggest happiness examples, even though like I don't know him on a social level really. I just know him from seeing him around town. One of the things I noticed about him is he's really positive, and he's just a positive guy. Like he just recently had shoulder surgery, and he was telling me about his surgery, and he was saying, it's going to keep me out of the water for 6 months, but I'm just happy to get it fixed. And he just really, really was able to look at that experience in a positive light. And one of the things I know when I observe happy people is that they're all really positive. They're choosing to see the good in the world as opposed to seeing the bad. So it's really, really cool. So find some happy people examples in your world and look at them and observe them and figure out like, okay, why are they so damn happy? Spend some time with them, talk to them, buy them coffee, so you can get some insight. That will really help you create your life plan. Because, if you can figure out why other people are happy, it's much easier to figure out a way for you to be happy. Okay, so that's number 7. The next ones are pretty quick. So number 8 on how to create a life plan is to break your own stereotypes, right? So you got to break your stereotypes. So what do you believe right now that doesn't serve you any longer? What are your stereotypes? What are some of your beliefs that are just not serving you anymore? What are they? And so it could be anything from like, hey, I need to get a real job, or I need to make $200,000 a year. I can't take a month off and go to Europe. I'll miss work. I can't make my kids play. I've got all this email and I've got this project to get out, blah, 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 blah. So think about what your stereotypes are and some of your beliefs are that are just broken and they're just wrong, and get rid of them. And because creating a life plan is largely going to be based on your beliefs and based on, how you think about life and what you believe about life. So you got to get in there and break your own stereotypes. So I would challenge you to write down 4 or 5 stereotypes right now that you have, and see what you can do to break those. So that's number 8. Number 9, to create a life plan, you need to look around and be observant. So you need to look around in your world, no matter where you are, and see what you like, what you don't like, things you would change, design that inspires you, people that inspire. Just be observant to your world. I think so often we're always rushing from place to place to place to place. We don't spend enough time being observant to what's going on in the world. So challenge here to create a life plan is to really be observant in everything you do. And, which leads me into number 10. Number 10 is to go outside your bubble. So we all have our own little bubbles, right? So we all are, either we've got our work bubble, we've got our home bubble, we've got our coffee shop bubble, we've got the Target and the Barnes and Noble down the street bubble. So go outside your bubble whenever you can. Eat somewhere different for lunch. Go and do something different that might be challenging for you. Try something new. Get outside your bubble to see exactly, whether something will stick in your life plan and help you create a life plan. As an example, for me, about a year and a half ago, I decided to try CrossFit. And I had never done it before, and I was really, really nervous because I was worried that, with having a bad back and having bad knees, it would not be good for me, and it would be really, really challenging. And I was really, really worried about trying CrossFit because I was just worried because I was like, well, Jesus, what happens if I get hurt? I was really, really nervous about it. But I decided, I was like, all right, I got to get outside my bubble. I can't just play basketball and football and surf and softball and not do some kind of strength training because I'm just going to rip my body apart. And I'm, 45 years old. So I can't keep doing that. And I got to say, going outside my bubble and trying CrossFit has been a life-changing experience for me. I mean, I've talked about it before. I've had Blake and Eric on this podcast before, but the people at CrossFit Society down in Solana Beach, they're fantastic. Blake Bender and Eric DePaula have just been amazing. They're the owners, and they've just been fantastic. So my point here is to get outside your bubble, because a lot of time, sometimes you'll fail and it'll go horrible. And then other times you'll do it and it will change your world and it'll just change your life for the better. Okay, number 11, volunteer. So volunteer as much as you can. So this may not be a ton on a monthly basis. Maybe it will be, but you can do good acts. You don't necessarily have to make them organized. You can volunteer your time. You can go do things like you can go make a bunch of sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and take them to homeless guys. So every year on my birthday, we tend to do that. We make, me and the girls make a bunch of sandwiches. We drive up and down the coast, a bunch of homeless kids, and if we run into homeless vets or whoever, we'll give them sandwiches and we'll pack them a lunch and give them everything. So that's just basically putting some good vibes into the world. But that'll also help you with your life plan because it gives you a little bit of something that we are in vastly short supply, I think, in our society, and that's perspective of how lucky we actually all are. So volunteer when you can, whether your cause is homeless or sexual abuse prevention or animals, whatever it is, do what you can and volunteer. That will help create your life plan. The 12th thing on how to create a life plan is to read. I always recommend you read a ton of books. So I had a professor in college, Billy Joe Lucas, philosophy professor, one of my favorite professors, and he said the best education you can get is reading 10,000 books on a variety of different topics. And I really think he was right. He ended up being just a crazy guy, and I love him. Very unique guy. But in his house, he had floor to ceiling books in every room, just bookshelf upon bookshelf upon bookshelf. And even in his bathroom, he had 2 or 3 bookcases just in his bathroom. He just had like a ton of books. And I remember one time I was over there for dinner and he had a book on his coffee table. It was a coffee table book, and it was about 5 inches thick, and it was just about ants. So, just this gigantic book about ants. So I really do think that the more you read, the more you're exposing yourself to cool things, and the more you're on your road to creating a good life plan and really developing your life plan and kind of clearing up some of the crazy in your world. So I usually have 5 or 6 books going at one time. I right now have 3 or 4 going. One of them is called Level Up, and it's by the guy who started Nerd Fitness. I'm just actually looking at my bookcase as I'm speaking to you. I read No Cape Required by Kristen Parrish, which is 52 Ways to Unleash Your Inner Heroes. Pretty cool, very quick read, really liked it. Way of the Seal by Mark Devine, also pretty cool book. I just read No Meat Athlete by Matt Frazier, which is kind of like a cookbook. And I just read Biz Stone's book, the guy who started Twitter, and I'm reading the guy who started Reddit. I'm reading his book as well. So I've got like 3 or 4 books 4 or 5 books, I guess, going on at one time. But yeah, all really cool stuff. And, it really helps you develop your life plan. I've learned a lot from each one of those books thus far. And any book that I read, I try to learn as much as I can from it. So reading is a great way to help you develop your life plan. The next one, 13, is not one you would typically expect, but I really do think it's true. And that is to see a lot of movies, to watch a lot of movies. So very rarely will you get advice where someone says, hey, spend time in front of a screen, right? Like that's just not usually what's going to help you from a personal development perspective. A lot of people wouldn't necessarily think that that's something that's going to make your life epic, but I think it does. I really do. I think I've learned a lot from movies. I mean, I learned, probably more from the movie Goodfellas, Godfather, and Good Will Hunting, than I did in many other, and many classes I actually took in college. Godfather is all about loyalty no matter what. Goodfellas to me was a great movie about creating the right team and really running a business that you believed in. I know you got to take the morality out of it to see that, but I really do think it was like that. Good Will Hunting was a really impactful movie for me because I was sexually abused, and that movie really allowed me to kind of feel those feelings and deal with those feelings and know that it was okay and know that it was, I could still be a man and still be like kind of a normal person, even though I had been abused. So Good Will Hunting, I mean, to this day, if Good Will Hunting comes on, I usually end up watching it. And I don't cry at a lot. I cry when the Patriots win Super Bowls. But I gotta say, when Rocky is on or Good Will Hunting, you can expect just a flood of tears from this dude, just because I don't know, I just can't handle. Like, I just love him so much, and just is just kind of funny because I'll watch it. And then, so I really do think that seeing a lot of movies is really, really crucial. I think it's something that will help you long term, and it's something that will help you creating your life plan. So 2 left. Number 14 is to travel. The more you travel, the more you see interesting shit, and the more interesting shit will happen to you. So, and that will also help you with your life plan. I mean, a perfect example of this is like, when I was in college, I flew to San Diego for lacrosse, and I would have never thought to live in San Diego or in California, but because we traveled here, I decided to move here. And look what happened since then. I moved here and, met my wife, had my daughters, ran my business, and really this is where my life is now. And it all started, based on traveling. So travel as much as you can. I think it's something that definitely will help your life plan. The final thing, number 15 on this is that you really, 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 whenever possible, you got to ignore society. Do whatever you can to ignore society. And what I mean by that is forget what society expects from you. Okay? Don't worry about it. Go do what you want to do. Develop the life plan that you want, that you want to. Develop something that is important to you. There are scores and scores and scores and scores of examples of people who just said, fuck it. I'm just going to go do what I want to do and what I believe in and what I'm passionate about, regardless of what people in society think. And I think that they have, they've done extremely well by doing that. And I think it's a really crucial part of developing your life plan is to have the ability to ignore society and not worry about what society thinks. So with that said, that is the end of this podcast. I appreciate you hanging in. I'm sure that you probably heard the dogs barking in the back, me drinking water, Bodie growling at Marley, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate that. I'm going to put a couple links in the show notes too. There's 3 pretty good articles on here. One from Stephen Atchison about finding, some questions to ask that will help you find your life's purpose. There's a cool blog actually on blog post on lululemon.com about your life purpose. And then the guy who does Zen Habits has a pretty good article about life purpose. So I'm going to put links to those, just some added stuff for you to check out. And I appreciate you listening as always. And I hope you have just a fantastically epic day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for checking out the Make Life Epic podcast. Check us out online at makelifeepic.com. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Look forward to talking to you soon.